The smoke from the fire rose slowly into the cold Afghan sky, carrying with it a scent so rich, so unforgettable, that anyone who breathed it in would never forget this place. And yet, what happened in this quiet countryside would change a life forever. If stories like this touch your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe, because some stories aren't just told, they are felt. The village of Darek-e-Sabz lay hidden between mountains that seemed older than time itself. The roads were barely roads, just trails shaped by footsteps, hooves, and years of survival. Life here was simple, but simplicity did not mean ease. Every sunrise brought both hope and hardship. In a small mud house at the edge of the village lived Rahim and his wife, Layla. Their home was modest, walls cracked from winter winds, a roof patched more times than either of them could remember, but it was filled with something rare, quiet resilience. Rahim was a man of few words. His hands told his story, scarred, rough, always moving. Whether tending to their small flock of goats or chopping wood before dawn, he carried the weight of survival without complaint. Layla, on the other hand, had a warmth that softened even the harshest days. Her laughter was rare, but when it came, it felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Layla prepared something special. It had been weeks since they had enough to celebrate even a small meal. But today was different. A single chicken, carefully raised and saved, was now being prepared over an open fire. The flames danced beneath it, crackling softly, as the aroma of grilled chicken spread across the valley. It wasn't just food, it was a moment. A reminder that even in struggle, there could be beauty. But as Rahim sat quietly, staring into the fire, something felt different. "Why today?" he asked, his voice low. Layla paused. For a moment, the wind was the only sound. "Because tomorrow may not come the way we expect," she replied softly. Rahim frowned, sensing something deeper beneath her words. That night, under a sky filled with stars, Layla revealed a secret she had carried for years. Before she came to this village, before she became Rahim's wife, she had a life elsewhere, one filled with education, dreams, and a family that believed in a future far beyond the mountains. But war had taken everything. Her family was lost, her home destroyed, and in the chaos, she found herself wandering, eventually reaching this village. She never told Rahim because she feared losing the only peace she had found. Rahim listened in silence. The fire between them flickered as if it too understood the weight of her words. "You could have left," he finally said. "And go where?" Layla whispered. This is my home now." The grilled chicken, once a symbol of celebration, now became something else, a silent witness to truths buried deep in the heart. The following days brought unexpected challenges. A harsh storm swept through the valley, destroying crops and scattering livestock. The village, already fragile, was pushed to its limits. Rahim worked tirelessly, helping neighbors rebuild, searching for lost animals, sharing what little they had. Layla, too, stepped forward, not just as a wife, but as someone who remembered a different life. She began teaching the village children under a tree, using charcoal and scraps of cloth as tools. For the first time, her past was not a burden, it was a gift. The villagers, once distant, began to see her differently. Not just as Rahim's quiet wife, but as someone who carried knowledge, strength, and hope. Weeks passed, and slowly, the village began to recover. One evening, much like before, the fire was lit. Again. This time, there was no special meal, just simple bread and tea. But the air felt different. Stronger. Warmer. Rahim looked at Layla, a rare smile forming on his face. "You brought something to this place," he said. "Something we didn't know we needed." Layla looked around, the children laughing, the villagers sharing stories, the mountains standing silent but watchful. "No," she said gently. "We brought it together." The secrets of the countryside were never about hidden treasures or forgotten paths. They were about people, their pain, their strength, and their ability to rise again, no matter how broken the world around them became. And as the fire crackled into the night, carrying its warmth into the endless sky. One truth remained clear. Even in the most forgotten corners of the world, hope can grow, quietly, patiently, like a flame that refuses to die. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe, because somewhere out there, another story is waiting to be told, and it might just change everything. The fire had burned low, but its warmth still lingered in the air, just like the quiet transformation that had begun in the village of Derek-e Sabs. And yet, not all change arrives gently. If you've stayed with this story so far, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, because what happens next will test not just their strength, but their trust in each other. The days grew colder, and with winter tightening its grip, the mountains no longer looked majestic, they looked merciless. Snow began to fall in thin, whispering layers at first, but soon it covered the paths, the rooftops, and the fields that once held promise. Rahim woke before dawn as always, but now his routine had become heavier. Food was running low, and the animals needed more care than ever. Every step outside felt like stepping into a battle against nature itself. Inside, Layla wrapped herself in a worn shawl, watching the door each morning as Rahim left. Her heart carried a quiet fear she never spoke aloud. One morning, as Rahim prepared to leave, she stopped him. "Take the longer route today," she said. Rahim looked at her, puzzled. "That path is dangerous in winter." Layla hesitated. "I have a feeling." He studied her face, there was something in her eyes, something urgent. Without another word, he nodded. That decision would change everything. Hours later, as Rahim moved carefully through the snow-covered hills, he heard something unusual, a faint cry carried by the wind. At first, he thought it was just the storm playing tricks on him. But then it came again. A child's voice. Following the sound, Rahim found a small boy, no older than 7, curled beneath a broken cart, barely conscious. His clothes were thin, his lips pale from the cold. Without hesitation, Rahim lifted him and wrapped him in his own coat. The journey back was slow and dangerous, but he didn't stop. Back in the village, Lila's heart raced when she saw Rahim carrying the child. "Who is he?" she asked. "I don't know," Rahim replied. "But he won't survive if we do nothing." They brought him inside, placing him near the fire. Layla worked quickly, warming water, wrapping him in blankets, feeding him small sips of broth. Hours passed before the boy finally opened his eyes. His name was Zaman. He had been traveling with his family when their cart broke down during the storm. In the chaos, he became separated and lost. The village searched for days, but there was no sign of his family. As the reality settled in, a heavy silence fell over Rahim and Lila's home. Zaman had nowhere to go. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, the boy began to recover. At first, he barely spoke, his eyes always searching for something, or someone, who never came. But Layla understood that. Silence. She began sitting with him each day, telling him small stories, teaching him simple words, showing him how to write his name with charcoal on a flat piece of wood. Rahim, though less expressive, showed his care in other ways, carving a small wooden toy for him, sharing his portion of food, placing an extra blanket over him at night. Without realizing it, their home was no longer just theirs. It was becoming a place of healing. But not everyone in the village saw it that way. One evening, a few elders gathered near Rahim's home. Their faces were serious, their voices low but firm. "We barely have enough for our own," one of them said. Taking in another mouth, "It's risky." Rahim listened quietly. Another added, "Winter has just begun. If we are not careful, we will all suffer." The words were not cruel, they were real. Rahim looked at Layla, then at Zaman, who sat silently in the corner, clutching the wooden toy. For a moment, the weight of the decision pressed heavily on him. Then he spoke. "If we turn him away," Rahim said slowly, "what does that make us?" The elders had no answer. Because deep down, they knew, survival was important, but humanity was everything. That night, something shifted again. The next morning, one neighbor brought a small sack of flour. Another offered dried wood. Someone else left a blanket at the door without saying a word. The burden was no longer Rahim and Lila's alone. It became the village's. As winter deepened, so did their bond. Zaman's laughter slowly returned, echoing softly through the once quiet home. Lila's lessons grew into small gatherings, with other children joining despite the cold. Rahim, though still a man of few words, found himself smiling more often. And one evening, as the fire burned bright once again, something familiar appeared. A chicken, prepared carefully over the flames. This time, it wasn't just for two. It was for a family they never expected to have. As they sat together, sharing the simple meal, Zaman looked up at Rahim and Layla. "Will I stay here, forever?" he asked softly. Layla reached for his hand, her eyes filled with warmth. "You will stay," she said, "as long as you need." Rahim nodded, his voice steady. "This is your home now." Outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside that small mud house, there was something stronger than the cold, stronger than fear, stronger than loss. There was belonging. And sometimes, the greatest secret of the countryside isn't hidden in the mountains or the valleys. It's found in the hearts of those who choose to care, when it would be easier not to. If this part of the story touched you, don't forget to like and subscribe, because the journey isn't over yet.